So let's talk about what's happening in California. And my heart is truly heavy for those people who have families in California, the people in California that have lost their homes or still fearing that they might lose their home. This is if you've never seen a forest fire, you can't really describe it. It's almost like a tornado. Unless you've been in a tornado or seen the damage afterwards, you really don't know what you're talking about with a tornado. It is unlike anything I've ever seen. Same thing with a forest fire. We had a small forest fire here up in the mountains of Idaho. Last summer, it was just about, 2 miles down the street from me. Luckily, the winds weren't there. But if the winds had kicked up, it probably would have burned my house down. I mean, you cannot describe a forest fire. It is, when it's out of control, you have no chance. Just get out of there. And my heart breaks for people who are going through this right now, and breaks for the people of California. Let me address that person right now. If you happen to be in California, know that you're not alone. You may feel like the flames have stolen everything from you, and I was thinking about this, this summer when I came back from that forest fire and thought all of this could be gone. The things that you have in your house, they are just things, but there are certain things, memories, pictures, things that you have collected over the years with your family that, can't be replaced. And I know what that must feel like. But two things. One, you're alive, you have your family, and help is on the way. My charity, Mercury One, is, along with the Red Cross and everybody else, is working tirelessly to bring relief and comfort and assistance to those who are affected right now. We are doing what our government is asking us to do. We don't want to get into the way of forest or of firefighters. They have enough trouble. But I want to talk to you first with compassion about why this keeps happening and what California needs to do about it. This is not my state. This is their state. But if you're asking for our help, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do is I had a friend I went to church with, and he called me one time, and he said, Glenn, I really need, I don't remember what it was, let's just say $1,000, because I got to get home, some family stuff. And I was about to say yes, but in my faith, it's the largest welfare program, I think, in the world. And we take care of, not just our own, but anybody who lives in the district of that particular church. The bishop is responsible for them, and we have to take care of our neighbors. And so with that, it's very orderly. When you have a problem, or if there is a problem with a neighbor or something, you go to the church and say, hey, my neighbor who's not a member of the church is really in trouble. Can you help? And they usually will. But with that, there are certain things that you have to do. You just don't get free money. You have to change your life. You'll take classes on how to, manage money or whatever the thing is. And so I said to this person, I was just about to say yes. And I said, hey, have you talked to the bishop yet? And he said, no, I haven't. Now, that's unusual in my faith. If you have a big problem, especially with money, you normally would go to the bishop. And I said, okay, let me call you back. And I called the bishop, and I said, hey, so-and-so just called me, and I can do this. Is there anything I'm missing here? And he said, Glenn, I'm so glad you called me. He said, yes. He said, this particular individual is struggling, and we've been helping him for a while, but he won't connect with the problem and correct the problems. And he said he's doing this from time to time. He'll call people and they'll just give him money, and then that hurts it. He said, so I'm going to ask you to do the thing that is probably going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. I know you have the money to help. Please don't, because it will set him back and not let him feel the full ramifications. And I said, oh, gosh. Okay, so I had to call my friend back and say, I can't right now. And I felt awful. I felt absolutely awful about it. But if we don't talk and face the problem, you're never going to solve it. Now, this again is not my problem. California, you're not my problem. Okay? I mean, I want to help, and as a citizen of America, you're another citizen. You are my neighbor. I want to help. I want to help people all around the world. But first, you have to help yourself. You know, natural disasters most times are out of our control. The extent of the destruction in California, you know, could be mitigated if we made smarter choices about how, you know, Californians manage their land and their resources and their votes. California has been playing with fire, literally, for a long time. Their forests are full of underbrush, dead trees, dried vegetation, which is kindling for those flames. The material builds up on the forest floor. It's a perfect condition for fire. If you're going to start a fire, go to California, because that's perfect condition. I'm not saying that literally, by the way. But it doesn't have to be this way. You know, you go to places like Sweden or Finland or Austria, countries that have large, vulnerable forests. They understand the importance of forest management, and they prioritize the clearing out of the underbrush and the dead trees. And they, because they're a little socialist in nature, they do it in a sustainable way. They partner with local industries that will take that material from the forest floor and they use it as biomass energy for other products. So it doesn't just reduce the fire risk, it creates jobs and a healthier ecosystem. Here in America, some states do it right. I mean, Florida has fires, but not like California. Why? Because they do controlled burns, forest thinning, routine practices. You know what? Honestly, God does this. Lightning. Before we would put forest fires out, or could, lightning would strike, and that would burn the forest down, and it replenishes the soil and everything else. Well, we don't want to do that because our houses are now surrounded by trees and forest and everything else. So we have to either do a controlled burn, or we have to go in and take all of that stuff that lightning would have taken out to replenish everything. But Californians won't do that. Why? The answer lies in bureaucracy and priorities. And really, honestly, eggheads. You know, these people from the cities that want to manage our forest have no idea. It's common sense. The environmental regulations, the lawsuits that block or delay any kind of forest management, ideology has gotten in the way of the practical, the life-saving solutions. And this has to change, California. It has to. You see devastation every year. And, you know, honestly, I really don't like insurance companies. But insurance companies, what they do, it's legal gambling. They are gambling that you are going to pay them more money than they have to pay out as a collective. Somebody's house might burn down. You might have something catastrophic, cancer or something that costs a buttload of money. But they're betting that all of the people in their community, they're sharing the risk. And not everybody's going to get cancer at the same time. That way they can make money. It's legalized gambling. Honestly, it is. Well, that's the way insurance works. And I don't like insurance companies because many times they're, scamming people or hurting people. However, let's not blame the insurance companies for getting out. If I'm a company and I have to make a bet, I'm pulling out of California. It's landslides, it's fires, it's floods, it's every year. Whole swaths of the state are burning down to the ground. What kind of bet is that? How do you keep a country? Now, what they'll say is they'll do what they did when you couldn't get flood insurance on the coastlines. We used to say, well, then don't live there. Or if you live there, accept the risk yourself. Okay. Instead, we didn't think that was fair. So we came up with government funding. If you couldn't get flood insurance, no longer was it don't live in a flood zone. Build your house somewhere. I don't know if you've seen the country, but there's lots of open space. Don't build in a flood zone. Instead, we wanted to help everybody live their dreams. So now we pay, as a federal government, for insurance for the coastlines. Why? Okay. The other issue is water. And let me tell you what the problem is in California. Now, we know what the immediate problem is. Firefighters don't have water coming through the fire hydrants. Why is that? We all know that, when we look for life on another planet, we look for water because water is essential to life, at least the life we understand. And that is a major issue in California and has been forever. However, California, take responsibility for the fires to some degree. You haven't built a new major reservoir since 1979. That was 4 decades ago. Now, I don't know if you know this, but 40 years ago, the population of your state was not the population that it is now. So the reservoirs that you had 40 years ago is way out of step with your population and your needs today. Your water storage capacity is exactly the same as it was almost half a century ago. And on top of that, and this is something Trump has addressed recently, billions, with a B, billions of gallons of rainwater flow straight into the ocean every year because you haven't built the infrastructure to capture and store the rainwater. Now, imagine what could be different if you had reservoir and aqueducts and desalination plants to store and provide water for all of the dry seasons. Water is life. California has spent decades neglecting its water infrastructure while prioritizing projects that make no meaningful impact on people's lives. This is not a failure just of government. It is a failure of vision. When a leader is not around, when the people lack leadership, there is no vision. And without vision, people perish. That's what's happening. Now, on leadership, I'm sorry to make this about politics, but you have to learn the lesson. It has to be said. How you vote matters. Look at Los Angeles. The progressive mayor cut the fire department's budget to fund other programs, to give money and housing, they say, for the homeless, but it's also illegal programs. And she gave it to NGOs. Now, these NGOs, they're not fighting fires in comparison of the cost of lives, homes, and communities that have been lost in these fires. Those NGOs, there's no comparison dollar for dollar. You have to have leadership that prioritizes the safety and the well-being of the citizens over their political agendas. And that's not happening in Los Angeles. Okay? It wasn't happening in Lahaina either. Same goes for the environmental policies. Progressive leaders block sensible forest management practices because they're more concerned about pleasing activists than protecting lives. They're more concerned about the dead trees in the forest than they are about the live animals who live in that forest. It's not compassionate, it's dangerous. Mercury One, we help everybody. I don't care where you come from. I don't care who you voted for. We are there for you. But we're also in North Carolina and other areas reeling from the hurricanes. We're also still in Lahaina, and no one's talking about those guys. And they will be out of a home for years. They're not the celebrity influencers who can afford to stay in a luxury hotel. God and the universe, for those in California, require us to do everything we can to help our neighbor, but help ourselves before we expect others.